Authorities recently discovered what some are calling a ranch of horrors. Survivors of this alleged cartel extermination camp have shared they were lured to the ranch by being told they could earn themselves a visa.
So authorities in Mexico have discovered a frightening border fortress allegedly used for a lot more than just smuggling people into America. And while the gangs operating this place promised their victims the American dream, this nightmarish facility was the last location anyone would want to find themselves. But because of unprecedented military activity along both sides of the border, the criminals running operations like this are on borrowed time.
Just a few meters beyond the entrance of this now cordoned off ranch, the horrors of one of the country's most notorious cartels are being unearthed.
We're on the first border patrol of the day with Mexico's National Guard. They want to show Mexico is stopping the flow of migrants, just as President Trump demanded.
Ahí está, a la derecha, están tapados.
Sadly, these camps do pop up occasionally. The reason that this one is particularly shocking is that over 200 pairs of shoes, IDs, even children's toys were found on this site.
Migrants who spent everything to reach the U.S. are now struggling to afford passage back by boat. While some depend on friends and family to send them money for the trip home, the same cartels that made millions smuggling migrants north are now profiting off their return.
It's on this ranch that Jalisco New Generation cartel recruited and trained dozens of people against their will. It's recently been designated a terrorist organization by U.S. President Donald Trump, one of the most powerful in all of Mexico.
This discovery has shocked the nation, which has struggled for years with mysterious disappearances. More than 124,000 people are missing in Mexico, and most cases are never solved.
So the gang multiple news agencies have connected with this facility are now claiming it isn't theirs. But what nobody's talking about is facilities like this were common before the US military was first sent to the southern border to close it completely. Because while the border was open, gangs and criminals were making $13 billion a year sneaking people and products into America, exploiting would-be illegal immigrants on an industrial scale that was only made possible by irresponsible open borders policies, which, contrary to popular belief, were not making the world a better place at all. And the existence of these gang-operated camps prove that if the opportunity to commit crime is out there somewhere, criminals are going to take that opportunity and do things with it none of us could ever imagine. Which is exactly what the authorities say was happening at this facility discovered in Mexico, which may have been the last location people were taken before shocking things happened which changed their lives forever. Things which only occurred with the help of America's progressive plans for historic levels of mass migration. Which brings us to the real reason camps like this exist in Mexico. They play a major role in facilitating mass migration, and they allow the people operating them to prey upon those inside any way they choose. And with US troops and special forces all over the southern border, these gangs have a problem because it's a lot harder today to sell people a counterfeit version of the American dream, since sneaking into the country is now virtually impossible. And when all the cartel's clients, including their operatives, get captured and deported immediately, or worse, sent to El Salvador's mega prison, possibly for the rest of their lives, they're now forced to use the idea of illegal immigration to exploit people in other, much more frightening ways.
Survivors of this alleged cartel extermination camp have shared that they were lured to the ranch by being told they could earn themselves a visa.
We found it because we had several anonymous calls, including relatives who accompanied us to where their son could possibly have been.
So two things are happening here. First, these gangs are still telling people they can illegally bring them into America. And second, there's a massive missing persons problem in Mexico, and places like this might help us answer some unanswered questions. Which is why when these criminals get captured, they belong in a place like El Salvador's mega prison, because these are some of the most dangerous people on the entire planet. And contrary to what immigration advocates might say, these people are making Mexico and America much less safe. And as you're about to see, these criminals are exploiting people on a scale most of us have never imagined.
The horrors of one of the country's most notorious cartels are being unearthed. What they found inside confirmed what authorities feared most.
So at this place, they found hundreds of pairs of shoes and personal belongings, but the people who owned those belongings or those shoes were nowhere to be found. And this place was discovered by a group that looks for folks who've gone missing in Mexico, but that brings up some very big questions, like what exactly was this place being used for? Why did people decide to come here? And why didn't the Mexican government do anything about this place? Here we can see a picture of this facility. You can see up at the top here, there's a wall around it. There's like some sort of guardhouse here. It looks like a prison camp. You can see that these people who are digging out in front of it are a lot shorter than the wall itself. From the ground, you can't even see what's going on inside this place. You'd need to be in the air or have like a drone or something. Apparently, in total, over 700 personal items were discovered in this place. But when it was found, it was completely abandoned. There was nobody there. But since this was an obvious large-scale operation, and the gang running it is one of the most notorious in Mexico, whatever was happening here has probably been moved somewhere else. And the one thing most of us here in America don't even think about when we think about immigration or the border is just how little the professional criminals running places like this care about the lives of others.
This was in a remote part of Mexico, but not too far away from one of the major cities, Guadalajara. It was raided in last October by Mexican authorities who didn't see anything. So you're either talking about staggering incompetence or high-level government corruption that allowed hundreds of people to be taken to this place.
So speculation is that people were being lured here under the promise of a trip to America somehow, and then at that point, some of them were never seen again. And when you realize that Mexico has a huge problem, not just with illegal immigration as people enter America, but also with missing persons, facilities like this site raise a lot of questions. Disappearances are common. Hundreds of thousands of people are gone and nobody has any answers. But what we do know is the open border has been used to exploit people, to get them to come to places like this and put themselves in the clutches of criminals, believing that there was some light at the end of the tunnel here. That's why it's so important that we're shutting down our border. It's gonna stop stuff like this from happening. And it looks very unlikely that the Mexican government was ever going to put a stop to anything that was happening here. The Mexican National Guard was tipped off to the situation last September, leading to a raid that resulted in the arrest of 10 people. Yet the officers who raided the site failed to find evidence of what was actually taking place here. And so they walked away. It had to get rediscovered by this humanitarian group. And to me, that makes it look like the Mexican government knew exactly what was going on here. But by not investigating it, they could claim to not know and thus sweep it under the rug like they do with a lot of the problems down there that many people in this country have no idea even take place.
The border crackdown here is bad news for the deadly gangs that run this place, because they make their money off the migrants desperate to cross. After days of talking with sources, we've got access to the Juarez cartel, one of the 4 criminal organizations fighting to control this city.
Incluso durante el tránsito por territorio mexicano hemos sido víctimas de 2 secuestros. Sí, toda la familia.
They were held captive and extorted for ransom they couldn't pay.
¿Qué era lo que más miedo tenías?
So here you have a family that's been held captive a couple of times, and they're being moved around to these various safe houses and underground facilities that are managed by these gang members, and they're afraid that things are gonna happen to them. And the reason people like this are getting kidnapped is because people don't get into America illegally without moving through various parts of Mexico that are controlled by criminals. By having the border open, you force people to try and make that dangerous journey, and they are just subjected to criminal group after criminal group, and there's nothing they can do about it if their ultimate goal is to come to America and enter without permission. And this has created a horrible situation that wouldn't exist if the border were closed and people weren't being lured into captivity by gangs promising them things in order to get them and possibly their family members. And although many of the people coming to places like this think a counterfeit version of the American dream is on the other side, these gang members have a totally different agenda in mind.
It's on this ranch that Jalisco New Generation cartel recruited and trained dozens of people against their will. It's recently been designated a terrorist organization by US President Donald Trump, one of the most powerful in all of Mexico. The cartel is accused of trafficking people across the country and internationally.
So what's essentially happening here is you have people who are being lured to this facility with the idea of a visa, but the cartels and the gangs have no plans for that to happen at all. Instead, they just want to get people inside this place, close the doors, and then conduct criminal operations. Their goal is literally just to make as much money as they can on masses of people who come to them willingly. And as you can see, these cartels have people stashed all over the place in these shady little safe houses where they're hiding folks, moving them around, telling them things to keep them there, possibly extorting them in various ways by asking for ransom payments. But the problem for these criminals is that with the border on lockdown, they can't make money the same way that they used to. They can't sneak people across for a massive payment and then have them work off that payment once they're in America. No, instead, they've got to do something else, which these families realize once they're already in the clutches of these crooks.
They were released, but they are still in shock.
Pero aquí estamos ya después de casi 11 meses, aterrorizados y sin esperanza, que es lo más, y atrapados.
Do you expect things to heat up with Trump?
Yeah, for us, because it's gonna be more difficult to get people.
So there you have it. These gangs, they can't work the border like they used to, so they're just finding new ways to make money off the masses of people who are coming to them. And look at this. The human rights groups who found this place are claiming that officers couldn't miss the clues that were actually there, and they're saying that a cover-up ensued. And then the Attorney General of Mexico comes out and says that, oh, the idea of this being a cover-up is just not credible. And it's almost as if their government does not want the world to know what was taking place here.
Es algo que, bueno, a mí me cuesta mucho trabajo creer y aceptar, demasiado fuerte, sí, fue algo que también se siente tan triste, frustrante y mucho enojo como cuando desaparece Sofía, ¿no? O sea, esto es una fosa, México es una fosa clandestina, las únicas que no se dan cuenta.
This is what's happening here. This open border situation has created an opportunity for these criminals so powerful that their own government can't even stop them. And all of these people are aware of it. They know that this is actually happening. They know that their government's trying to cover it up. And by America, some Americans saying, hey, we need an open border. This is a great thing. No, it's not. We can see that it's not. This is not a great thing for people in America or people in Mexico. Yet these criminals are making so much money. They've gotten to a level so big and so powerful that their own government won't investigate them. They're just going to keep doing this as long as the opportunity's there. And that's why it's important America send the message to the entire world that the border is closed. Once people get that message, they're not going to go to these cartels and these gangs anymore. They're not going to be lured by the idea that, oh, we can sneak you into America, just come to us. People are going to know that that's not true. Revealing that the most humane thing America can do as far as immigration is concerned is to shut the border. That right there is going to save lives.
Has been a flashpoint for mass migrant surges, but also a known corridor used by Mexican cartels. Officials say that this new wall will help Border Patrol agents on the ground, not only stopping illegal crossings, but also slowing down cartel smuggling operations when it comes to humans, which was taken advantage by open gaps along the border after construction was halted under the Biden administration. The Biden administration paused all projects involving border wall construction by executive order. You can see some of the...
We were told in America that building this wall was a bad idea, that this was just going to hurt people. But no, closing the border is going to stop people from being exploited on the Mexican side of that border. And then again, after these folks come to America, many of these people end up working in exploitative situations where they have to then pay off massive debts for being brought through everything we've just looked at. And when you see these massive groups of people trekking northward, these are groups that are totally co-opted by these cartels and these gangs. Every single person you see didn't get there for free because they're broke. No, these cartels are extracting every bit of wealth they have from these folks. And by building a wall and shutting down the border, you remove the opportunity to illegally enter America. And once you do that, these cartels and these gangs have absolutely nothing to offer people. And you take away their money, you take away their power, you take away all of the resources they use to totally co-opt the Mexican government, which hurts law-abiding people in Mexico and in America.
The past 4 years saw an exponential growth in the flow of irregular migration through the lawless Darien Gap. Today, those numbers have dwindled to almost nothing. There's a twist to the story, however. Closing the U.S. border made many migrants look for work elsewhere, or even decide to return to their home countries.
So contrary to what we're told here in America, it's actually bad for these countries to have every able-bodied person who's healthy and hardworking to leave. That just is going to make these countries much more poverty-stricken. And by keeping the border open, we're essentially draining these countries of every valuable resource they have. They're just going to fall apart further. More people are just going to be hurt in these places as poverty continues to take over. And if every person with the thousands of dollars and the ability to earn money in America leaves that country, that's just going to hurt the poor who have to stay and are unable to leave, revealing that mass migration just creates more suffering, not just for the people who have to travel through various parts of Central and South America subjecting themselves to criminals, but also for the people who are left behind and remain in a country that is a shell of its former self. What do you think about that? Is shutting the U.S. border a good thing? Is that going to save lives, or is our country wrong for doing that? Should we leave it open, which would just allow and empower these criminal gangs to do whatever they want, making untold amounts of money? Thank you so much for watching. Let me know. I'll see you in the next video.